I am here today to review another movie for you. We're going to be talking about 1977's Schock. Okay, before we get started, I just have a few things to say. First of all, thanks for 6,000 subscribers. I'm so excited to have you guys. I've made really good friendships with a lot of y'all just through this channel. So thank you so much for being here, and I'm going to keep at it, y'all. Next, I have another short film out. This one was actually created by the Gordonite here on YouTube. I will have links. This short film is called Gospel. I am in it, and I also shot and edited my parts and then handed them over to Arnie, the Gordonite, to assemble with his parts and do all the finishing touches and stuff. So please check it out. It's awesome. And it's really cool. Like, this is the first film I've done with somebody else, so it's very exciting. And finally, I was a guest on another YouTube channel, Nevaeh's Nightmare. She interviewed me and we just talked about movies, music, and paranormal experiences. On her channel, you'll see a lot of paranormal, mystery, and true crime content. So please check that out too. I think it was a really good talk. Now, let's get on to that movie review. So I first watched Schock many years ago. Before I really knew anything about Italian cinema, I found Schock at random on Prime Video, which is something I used to do, is just pick random shit off of Prime Video that looked like horror of some kind and I would watch it. So I'm pretty sure I had seen Suspiria by this point, but nothing else Italian. So within the first few minutes of watching Schock for the first time, I was seeing like the boy running and playing in the yard and stuff, and Daria Nicolodi running after him, and I was like, something's wrong with this movie. And then my next thought was like, I think this is Italian or something. Schock was released in 1977 and directed by Mario Bava. I know I don't talk about Mario Bava very much at all. I'm more prone to talk about Lamberto Bava, but this is a Bava film that I really do love. Just put this out there, as is policy with most of my reviews. I'm not spoiling the ending here, so if you haven't seen it, it's all good. Schock is starring our queen, Daria Nicolodi, John Steiner, Ivan Rasimov, and David Cullen Jr. It is part of the Beyond the Door trilogy, and I haven't seen any other parts of that trilogy, so hopefully I'm still qualified to review Schock. Here is your synopsis. Several years after the suicide of her husband, Dora moves back into the house where it all happened, with her new husband Bruno and her young son. A series of unexplainable events leaves Dora increasingly desperate to get out of the house. So, yeah, I know it was kind of harsh for my first thought to be, something's wrong with this movie. But the first time I watched it, as someone who was unfamiliar with Italian cinema, I was like, a few things were putting me off, like the dub. I hadn't really seen much dubbing in my life. And also just the natural beauty of the cast. They were just like real people. They weren't overly done up or anything like that. And they just looked a little different than what I was used to. And I was like, huh? And even the set of this movie is very natural looking. It's all rather raw, I guess you could say. The film has quite a low budget appearance and sort of like quality about it. But yeah, this was an entirely different flavor that I wasn't used to at the time. It felt more like some sort of a home movie rather than a theatrical release. But even several years ago, the first time I watched it, I was intrigued. So I was prepared to power through. Yes, this movie is kind of a shock at first, but it quickly grew on me. It has this way of welcoming you into it, even though it starts out kind of like awkward and clumsy and slow. And yes, this is a horror movie, but for a long time, you know, even though it's kind of like cute and welcoming, for a long time, nothing's really happening. And it's hard to even discern, is this horror and what kind of horror is it? But this is one of those films where a lot of little things are happening. a lot of little things are happening that don't make sense, and they're just like slowly adding up. So we're gradually getting this sense of unease, but it's built up with small little pieces. Still, throughout the whole movie, you're just kind of wondering, like, where is this going? Like, where are you taking us? We have a tiny little cast in this movie. It's just so interesting. Like, I suppose this movie could almost be a play. Anyway, so we have this small cast. It's mostly about the husband, the wife, and the son. And then Ivan Rassimov plays a doctor a doctor/friend who's sometimes around. That's pretty much it. There are a few other people in the movie, but like, they don't really have a purpose. I thought all the acting and casting was great. Even this little boy was acceptable, okay? And I normally have some sort of qualms with child actors because very few of them get it right. And I guess since I saw this may have been my second Italian movie ever. This is my first time seeing Even, was when I first saw this, so that's special. And of course, Daria, I love her in this role. She is so powerful and she really makes the movie. Her performance is incredible. But I did read on Wikipedia that they initially considered Mimsy Farmer for this role. Honestly, I love that too. I like both options. I'm not mad with the way it came out with Daria playing this role, but I think Mimsy could have also done it awesomely. And it's interesting, like, now looking back and seeing the kinds of things that Daria was wearing in the movie, like, they're very Mimsy outfits. So like I said, this film has a really, really low budget feel. These people look like real people wearing real outfits. The house looks like a real house, which is really not what I'm used to in the Italian and Euro stuff I've been watching, because it's a lot more decorative. This house in Schock is just anybody's house. It's not really overly decorated or even overly furnished because they just moved in. So it has just this very realistic feel to it. Everything looks pretty ordinary, but yeah, that brings a certain degree of authenticity. And now that I think of it, the whole movie pretty much takes place in the house, which, like I said, could set it up to be a play, but it also creates this feeling of entrapment and isolation because we are not leaving this house. People aren't really coming to this house. We're just here. Bruno, the husband, he's just at work a lot, leaving Dora and her son for extended periods of time. And like, Dora doesn't seem to have a lot of friends. So isolation here contributes to the horror that ensues. Visually, I think the film is really nice. We do have the low budget look going here, but I also noticed the lighting was really nice and intentional. I don't know too much about lighting, but it seemed like a little extra care was taken with the lighting. And I do like that we are inside the house and like going to these same rooms over and over, and the white walls and the dark basement and just the images of Daria in a nightgown really leave a visual imprint on the mind. Okay, the music. Now, y'all may know I'm a fan of repetitive, annoying musical scores, probably because I've played a lot of video games. This soundtrack here is very weird. It's very repetitive. There's like this music box kind of theme that just cycles over and over and over. It's strange, but I think that makes it even more memorable. Some people probably find it annoying, but I'm cool with it. So, I haven't talked much about the horror. The horror pretty much really kicks into high gear towards the end of the movie. Up until that point, you're like, what's actually going on here, right? It's more like a psychological thriller until we get towards the end. In this film, for me, being someone who's mostly watching Giallo, this film is a nice diversion away from Giallo because this is one of those situations where these supernatural elements actually turn out to be something truly supernatural. It's not just a red herring. So we really get to go into the supernatural with this film. And I think it has a way of getting supernatural without ripping off other movies of the time. Now, I saw some people saying it was like an Exorcist ripoff, but I don't see that whatsoever. And it does have an evil kid, which we see a lot, and it's like an Italian meme to have evil kids in your horror movies. But that's, I mean, there's so much more to the film than that. Okay, so like I said, the horror really kicks in towards the end of the movie, and it is amplified times 10 by Daria's performance. She was just such a multi-talented woman, but I love to see her in acting and just like in a lead role. She kills it. The horror, I think the horror is really great. It just feels like true horror when I'm watching it. There is even a jump scare in the movie that got me. It got me for real. I'm going to insert it, okay? It doesn't really give anything away, but I'm gonna insert this jump scare so you'll know which one I'm talking about. If you don't want to see it, just skip ahead a little bit. And like many of these movies, we get a reveal at the end. And the reality of this reveal, I mean, there's some surprise there, and it's also just very dark. It's a dark movie. It's dark and disturbing. So I rewatched this film for the purpose of making this review, but I still really love it. And it works for me even more now that I understand the broader genre. But even the first time I watched it, I loved it. It's a very lovable movie. Even though it's kind of rough, it's kind of weird, almost simplistic at times, but the heart and soul of this movie that reveals itself in the final scenes is very powerful. I feel like there is a lot of love behind this movie. And like I said, it feels like true horror, like in the most classical way. It's definitely one that you have to watch till the end. Like you have to power through, because when you get to the end, it's like, oh. Now I will say there is a lot of backstory. There's like an understory in this film that is really necessary to understanding what we're seeing in the movie. But we don't actually get to see much of this backstory, not even in flashbacks very much. And I think there's so much there in the understory that isn't shown to us. It's just like touched upon to explain things. But I think it would have been really great to kind of show us a little bit more somehow, whether through flashbacks or, I don't know, you know? It's just kind of a shame some of the things that they don't get the opportunity to actually show us, and instead they just tell us. Yeah, that makes sense. Even so, it's still very satisfying to gain the full clarity and get the full story at the end. So, yes, I love Schock. Oh yeah, I almost forgot. Thank you to the mayor. That's where I got my copy. Thank you. This film's not for everybody. I can already kind of tell what critical reviews might have to say about the film. But for me, I like them a little rough and messy and misunderstood because of Daria's performance and the scenes towards the end where things just get crazy. That makes the movie like totally a winner in my book. And I kind of like this bare bones style of the film. It's just, like I said, makes it lovable. So there we have it. Those are my thoughts on Mario Bava's 1977 Schock. What do you think of this film? Have you seen it yet? Well, if you haven't, it's on Tubi in the US. Let me know your thoughts. Again, don't forget to check out Gospel, my short film with the Gordonite. And don't forget to check out my video over on Nevaeh's Nightmare. And thank you for 6K. I don't even know what to say. That rhymed. Anyway, I will see you next time. Ciao.